Welcome everybody back to another episode of What the Devil. Me and Marcel today are going to dive, a little bit deeper into what's been going on at United, because as we all know, kind of United, we're in the gutter. But there's reasons behind it. There's this meeting that's happened recently. There's individual players who aren't playing properly. There's, we need to figure out at the same time, what's best for the club, what are the next steps. But the first thing we need to talk about is the big thing that happened yesterday was this executive meeting. So the story goes that it's been on the books for a while. They met in London after being at the Villa game, all of them together. But although everyone's painting it as a picture of, this is just a standard meeting that was going to happen, there is no sugarcoating the fact that that was a crisis meeting. It doesn't matter if it's been in the books for like 2 months. When we get to that date where they walk into that room in West London and spend 6 hours in that room talking about the club, about Ten Hag, about everything that's going on, that it was a crisis meeting because United are at a complete crisis point.
Facts. I mean, they decided to keep Ten Hag on. At the start of this season, they believed and they backed him. I don't think they would have got to this point, but the turn of the events after the last, maybe in all comps, 10 games for Manchester United this season, all of a sudden you're in a situation where you're deciding whether the decision you made just a few months ago, you might have to turn your back on it. And I don't blame them, it being the big topic of conversation in this meeting, but let's see what happens, because Ten Hag's gone on holiday, so we don't know if the following week they make this decision or if it's imminently that they make this decision. I feel like they're maybe trying to buy a little bit of time to make the decision, because it's a huge decision to make whether he stays or goes. But if they do back him, well, they're going to be very brave, to decide to keep him on after we've seen kind of, I wanted to support a lot that's been going on, this season, but it's very hard to. He's just made it very difficult. The results speak for itself.
Yeah, I think the truth behind this meeting is that we were never going to get a clear statement and answer from this meeting. Everyone would have wanted one. Like you reckon, like in a simple ideal world, the 6 of them or 8 of them, however many there were, would walk into that room and just go, "This is what we think. All right, all in favour, sack. Okay, who's keeping? Right, majority rules, he's gone." But that's just not how it's going to work. Like, the truth is that's not how this works. That was probably just step 1. I don't know if there's going to be another conference call tomorrow, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But what it says as of this morning, the news that came out this morning, was just that there's no definite decision been made. To me, that says that the opinions in that meeting weren't strong enough for Ten Hag to go. So therefore, I think for Ten Hag to go, they all have to be very unanimous and strong in that. Some reports say that Sir Jim wants to change, but then Omar Barada might have a different opinion, Brailsford might have a different opinion. They might be thinking more long term, or let's just stick it out until the end of the summer, or let's see if it gets even worse for November. Because for me as well, I am astounded at how quickly it's all fallen apart. It's weird, because after the FA Cup final, you kind of thought, okay, yeah, that season what it is. The injuries, all of that. Just they impacted the massive games, and also we were just really poor. But after the FA Cup final, we won that game, brought in the players in the summer, and you're thinking, great, let's push on. But this is the third season in a row where it's just started shambolically. First season, we recovered somewhat, finishing third, winning the Carabao Cup, players kind of kicking into gear. Last season, everyone just collapsed, fell injured, and it was all a mess from minute 1. And this season, well, it feels more like it's going the way of the second season than the first season. Probably because of the baggage of the previous season. But I just feel like this meeting, we were never going to get anything out of this meeting. Because it's step 1 in the process of thinking, okay, do we change stuff now? Because that's the question that we pose, is what do we do next? Let's start talking about it, because they have to do a complete U-turn from decision they made in the summer.
It's crazy as well, like, and you got to a lot of the blame goes on the manager for that, because he's meant to oversee an upturn in performances, or at least some sort of foundation. But it's like none of that's happened. I think maybe the reason why we don't see something happen so quickly is it might be something to do with money. Speaking to some fans, they would say, do we have the financial capabilities to, sell, to sack him right now? We didn't have a lot of money in terms of the transfer window this summer, so maybe it's going to be a difficult situation to sack him straight away and fork out that money. You maybe lose money in the January window. That takes away your budget for the summer, maybe potentially. But I just feel like it has to be a decision that's made very soon. I think this is a really good point in what we've seen. We've seen maybe, like I say, 10 in all comps, but 7 or 8 Premier League games. I'm not sure, and it's not been good enough. There's been games where we should have won, and a style of play has been very hard to come by with this team, and the one that he wants to put and lay down for the team, it's not been happening. It's just been, 6s and 7s and very dysfunctional at times. So I think they've got to be honest with themselves and just say, you know what, we made a decision, it's not worked out, and we haven't got that. We've invested a lot, but we might have to turn our back on this. If they keep him, do they keep him for just till the Christmas? When's the next checkpoint? When's the next time that you look at it again and say, is this good enough? Because you might be in risk of making this a write-off season.
Yeah, if you wait too long to make the decision.
Too long, yeah.
I do think with this window, I think INEOS this 2-week break. I think INEOS have a little more time, because if Ten Hag's on holiday, nothing's happening at the club. Let's say he comes back from holiday on Saturday afternoon, right? Training will then start up again for those who didn't go on the international break on the Monday.
Yeah.
And so INEOS then in theory would have until Monday to decide whether or not to sack him, because then if all the players come back on Monday and let's say it's given to Ruud van Nistelrooy on the interim for the next 3 weeks while they then hunt for a permanent solution, it doesn't need to happen until the Monday or the Tuesday anyway, because then let's say Ruud would still have the week to figure out what he wants to do, and all the big players at the club, most of them like Bruno, Dalot, Sandro Martinez, all these people who have gone away, they won't be back until Thursday anyway.
Yeah.
So I think there didn't need to be a decision made yet. There didn't need to be one made yesterday. He doesn't need to be one made today. There needs to be one probably by the end of this week. I'd say, I don't know, again, I have no idea when Erik Ten Hag's back, but it's when he comes back. Because, they wouldn't fire him, I don't think, over a phone call. Because they flew to Ibiza to tell him he still had his job. They wouldn't then fire him over a phone call. I think they'd wait for him, slightly cruelly, they'd wait for him to come back into the office. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe's just sat there like, boss, I'm sorry. It's time to go.
No, I agree with you. I actually agree with you. I don't think it would be something, just all of a sudden, and I think it will be something decided once he comes back. It's just, they have to be honest with themselves. I think they really do have to be honest with themselves, what they've seen so far. And are they going to allow that to continue? That's a big risk in itself. I do think the next group of fixtures, again, there's a lot to hope for. You could, get some results. I think there's a couple of home games in there, but it's like, the performances at home haven't been good. The last were big losses. The last two were Liverpool and Spurs, big losses. So I don't know, Dylan.
Our run from let me just check in this now, from what I believe I saw last time, is actually quite nice.
Yeah, it is.
Brentford at home, Fenerbahce away, West Ham away, Leicester at home.
Yeah.
And then Chelsea, PAOK, I forgot what they're actually called. Leicester, Ipswich, Bodo, Everton.
It's crazy to say.
That's up until end of November.
It's crazy to say it.
It's a pretty decent run.
Winnable games. Just me, as how I feel about how I look at the team, they're not performing that well though. The performance level's not there. But when I look at our squad, they should win those games, or at least get a majority of them some good results out of those games.
Yeah.
So
I had this argument quite a lot with friends of mine, is that they say overall, they watch United play and they go, your players aren't good. I could not disagree more with that. I think on an individual level, and I said this, I remember saying this at the end of Solskjaer's reign as well, actually. The players we have, our squad, I think is a really good squad. 2 years ago, if you'd said we got Lisandro Martinez, Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, etc., and then Andre Onana, if you say we had Onana 2 seasons ago, I don't know, was it Inter? Yeah. But you go, I imagine we had Onana, blah, blah, blah as well. You go, that is a set of incredibly good players. Obviously, then we also had Varane, Ronaldo, all of these people. But I think our squad's good, even players like Rasmus Højlund. And even to an extent, Ugarte, I know he's getting a lot of stick at the moment, but good player, I think, hope. And even Christian Eriksen, all these players, I think, are actually really good players, and we do have a really good squad.
Yeah.
We just don't have, I remember saying this to you last week, we just don't have the manager to be able to use them. And I am convinced under the right manager, our squad goes up 2 or 3 levels.
Yeah, agreed. And that's the issue. I don't know whether, I remember Gary Neville talking about Ten Hag having to stumble on a formation or just a consistent way of playing and a way that works. But that's like we still haven't found our style or football. Like before, we was talking about INEOS trying to set kind of a tone of style of football. Hopefully, that was in the conversation in the meeting.
Oh,
How
that
do we
will
want
be.
to
Yeah,
play?
Jason Wilcox was there. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure, and he's I think the architect
Yeah.
of what we're meant to look like on the pitch.
Yeah, so I think, you know, they oversaw the investments that were made. They need to write out now because Ten Hag's not their signing of a manager. We was talking about this yourself. Everyone was saying to me at times, they've changed all these other things. Why wouldn't they now change the manager? So now they've made these investments that they were partly overseeing. Ten Hag obviously a part of that as well. But I think now they need to get a manager that's adaptable, to the opponent and to what he's got as a squad and can play a consistent style of football, And for me, I was saying before Julian Nagelsmann, but I don't even want to look to Never Manager because all of a sudden they could be saying, you know what, he's staying for whatever reason. And I feel like we, as fans, we just have to maybe back that or at least try and support as best as we can, which will be difficult. But it looks like if they keep him, it's a write-off season again. So I think they've got to make a solid decision on and think about what they've done in terms of investments, who they've signed, and their potential and how they're affecting their potential as well. Because
what they can't do is go, we'll give you another 4 weeks. They have to give him a whole season or sack him now, I think. And with the managerial changes, what's quite a trend, we've got a stat here from The Athletic, lovely graphic, talking about basically Manchester United's performances, and it's the club ELO, which according to The Athletic is a measure of team strength, which allocates points for every result weighted by the quality of the opposition faced. So on here, as you can see, I feel like we're on Sky Sports Monday Night Football now. It's great. When we've changed managers, especially Mourinho and Solskjaer, there's been eventual upward trends. With Moyes and Van Gaal, which I think we both agree were failures of managers at the club, the trend is downwards. Ranieri's only a couple months, the trend is continuing to go downwards, and under Ten Hag, the general trend is as well just down. There is, I think, on here it shows a clear difference between managers who actually found a way to play a style of success, which is Mourinho and Solskjaer, and under Ten Hag. And under Ten Hag right now, the latest point is the lowest it's ever been. So we are the points we're winning in the, I don't know if this is just the Premier League, let's say it's just the Premier League or just winning against teams. We're only winning the lowest quality games out of the entire time. Like, think about how bad it got under Mourinho. And how bad it got under Mourinho towards the end is higher than it ever has been under Ten Hag, the normal trend. And I think because when I saw this yesterday, I think this says everything. And I also think this shows exactly what a new manager will do. I reckon that right at the end, Ten Hag down there, when that goes up again, we'll see. Well, sorry, when we get a new manager again, I think that will go straight back up again.
Yeah. Do you think though, because for me, Ralph and Ten Hag have both tried to change the culture and style of football, whereas the previous managers have a similar philosophy or style, I would say, in terms of Ferguson, Moyes, maybe not Van Gaal, and that's why you saw the heavy downward trend and the overall boring football under Van Gaal, but possession. But Mourinho and Solskjaer as well, and Oli, those four managers in particular, they had a particular style of football that's relatively similar in terms of foundation, whereas Ralph and Ten Hag tried to change the culture. Do you think that could also indicate, there's a little bit of indication of that, like those two managers tried to do pressing systems, front, forward line pressing, these kind of things, and they were talking about open heart surgery, players taking time to come back. Do you think that could potentially be something that this is showing as well, that we're not able to change and convert our style of football? It would have to be a never counter-attacking manager to see an upturn in quality of points against bigger opponents.
I don't necessarily think so. I think all that shows us in terms of what that shows us with Mourinho and Solskjaer versus the rest is that Mourinho and Solskjaer knew how to use their players better than the other ones did. There might have just been because they knew their players were best suited to counter-attacking styles, especially under Solskjaer, when the front three was Martial, Greenwood and Rashford with Bruno feeding them, and then Scott and Fred behind sitting. But I think all that shows is that Mourinho and Solskjaer, they knew how to use the exact squad they had
at the time,
and they weren't trying to impose a specific thing, a specific style on a squad,
Yeah.
which is this is what Pep does. Pep doesn't impose a specific style on a squad. He does just change the system depending on what suits his squad best. Like when they had Sterling and Sane, they were so explosive in the wide areas, and once they've now moved to De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, and Haaland, they're so much more narrow and focused on those players' strengths. And when they're playing John Stones in midfield, like what a manager would do that? But Pep created a system to understand and get the best out of a centre-back playing in midfield. I just feel like the others, they haven't done that.
Yeah.
And we have the Sky Sports graphic that's been going around everywhere in Erik ten Hag has beaten his own record of worst start to a season after 7 games.
Yeah.
That Solskjaer season is the one he got sacked in, 9 points after 7 games. Ten Hag did that in 23-24 last season, 9 points. Now we only have 8. Like, you shouldn't sack a manager off a stat, but again, it's another thing. That's crazy.
Yeah, that is it's why I got to a stage where I'm saying Ten Hag out, you know, and it's like you can't back what we've been seeing right now. It doesn't make any sense to do that. I mean, last season for me, you know, it was so dysfunctional, the team, with all the injuries and stuff. I said to myself, well, there's clear reasons as to why he can't build on the first season. But this season, we've invested, you know. He's given us a new style of play. It's not working. So INEOS have to be honest with themselves, unless they, you know, literally change the way that they force him to change the way that he's playing. This is a poor show of results here. I think it's only going to be a matter of time before, you know, we're losing certain games or we revert back to this style. This is a trend, you know. Last season we were seeing this, and then this could easily get back to this kind of poor run of games over 7, 8, 10 games, whether that's in March or around January time. So I just don't have that full trust in what Ten Hag's doing right now, and that's a big issue.
I think a big thing that shows the issues that Ten Hag has more than anything is, it's the third stat I want to show, is the where we shoot from. So this stat, just for audio listeners who may not be able to see the screen, again, it's from The Athletic, talking about where do Man United shoot from the league this season. The most common area where we shoot from is just outside the D, or in the square middle of the pitch, with 19% of shots coming from there. That, to begin with, is a massive red flag, and quite hilarious. The square is quite red. Is that so many of our shots coming, that's like what, low XG pot shots outside the area. The average shot XG at United is 0.13, which is every 100 shots we take, we score 13, which isn't a great conversion rate. And then we got 15% of shots. That's what, Marcus Rashford's area, kind of on the left side of inside the box. And it's pretty evenly spread. But then the bit that's, I think, so shocking, is what we've spoken about before, is there's, in the little box, right-hand far post. So let's say you're crossing in from left-hand side, far post on the right-hand side, there's none. There's nothing. We have 2 players who are right-footed playing on the left-hand side at the moment, in Diogo Dalot and Marcus Rashford. So 2 players who want to cut inside. And if you cut inside, you have 2 choices: shoot or play across towards the back post. And you're telling me we don't have anyone shooting at the back post. I don't think it's because we don't have anyone who's taking shots there. I just think we don't have the quality to get the ball there. You got 2% right in the 6-yard box, 7% on the left-hand post, and 0 on the right-hand post, and then 9% on the penalty spot, 9% further back. It blows my mind a bit. Like, how are we not create? Like, because we're creating chances, and we allegedly have an XG of 10 in the Premier League, having scored 5 goals. But this shows us why we've scored 5 goals from an XG of 10.
Yeah.
Because we're taking pot shots from outside the area.
It's really interesting. Like, Ten Hag obviously is tried to utilize, you know, false 9 systems, but before, you know, before at Ajax, he used to have a target man, you know, at times, and you need to see a lot more goals being scored in and around the box. Like, that's just so important. To have nobody at the back post doesn't make any sense to me. Where's all the cutbacks? We were talking about cutbacks and all these things. Like, it's not enough. It's just not enough. So for it to only be outside the box, it's like we're not even entering the box. Xerxes is a player that doesn't enter the box enough. You know, our wide players try and get there, but it just is really it's really sad stats to see right now that, you know, we don't have a focal point number 9 that's always going to be
our best football under Ten Hag was played when we had Wout Weghorst up front.
Yeah.
Not even where he scored 3 goals, but I think he just facilitated the best football we had under Ten Hag. And also games when Anthony Martial was playing. I know we haven't had Rasmus Højlund this season. That will be a reason, I think, if we compare before Rasmus Højlund was starting to, since Rasmus Højlund started, let's say in 2 months, if this is remade by the Athletic, we'll probably see a lot more shots inside the area. But it just, so average distance to a shot is 15.8 yards. That's way too far away. Shots per game, 12.7. XG per shot, 0.13. If my maths is right, I'm going to check. So shots per game, I'm going to do some maths, quick math live on the podcast, see how quickly I can do this. So if we've got 12.7 average shots per game and an average XG of 0.13, that's an average of 1.6 goals a game.
Let's hope
which
it
is just not
it's not going to be enough.
We need an average of higher than that. Based off those two stats.
We've bought potential, over this summer in Xerxes. Højlund also purchased potential. We were saying at one point, should Ivan Toney have come, this kind of thing. It would have been interesting to see how he would have affected the forward line. But it's the system. The system and the players playing the system. Ten Hag's had a huge issue with that, selecting the right players that kind of fit together to create more opportunities to score. Last season it was like Højlund wasn't getting the ball enough. He wasn't getting service, but he was finding himself in the box a lot. But this season now it's like we rarely get opportunities where our striker and another player, say Bruno, is arriving in the box and they're there as a presence and they're getting opportunities. It's just really annoying and frustrating to see as a Man United fan.
More than anything, it's just frustrating.
So it's going to take time for it to change, but I think this manager's created a system that is suffocating, and maybe with a different group of players it could really work. But with this group of players, and even for the Premier League, 2 in the midfield and stuff like that, I just don't think it's going to work. Yeah,
like you were talking about Bruno Fernandes there, he is a player who's caused a lot of conversation, and that 19% shots with the shots outside the area, the most concentrated area of shots, that is Bruno's area more than anything. And it's a big question, like what do we do with Bruno Fernandes now? What's like? I know you said last week take a month off, but is it time where we just have to say, look, everyone plays on merit, you've got to get dropped, or do we keep him because often he's been able to pull through bad times, or is it just a time where we say, right, stop playing?
Yes, I think for now it's stop playing, and then his position is not the 10. He cannot play in the 10 if we want to be progressive, play progressive football. If you want a 10 to retain the ball in the opposition's area and make correct passes, even if you want a 10 to dribble, and dribble and break through the lines with dribbling ability, he's not that 10 for that now. In a counter-attacking system, I think he's a really good player because he frees your wingers really quickly, or your forward player that wants to break the lines. But I think he's a 6 or an 8. I really do think he's a 6 or an 8. And it sounds weird when I would say that, because I know he's very erratic with the ball and he gets rid of the ball quickly. But I genuinely think he can play, especially an 8 that arrives extremely late into the box, with another midfielder in front of him. I think that's his best position. He is not a 10 anymore. And the quicker we see that, the better it will be for us.
I don't agree with the notion that he can play as a 6. I know it's been something that's kind of floated ever since he arrived, and I think on his debut, Solskjaer initially started him, I think, alongside Pogba as a slightly deeper midfielder. I still think he has the ability to be such a creative force for us, but maybe standing further back as an 8. So towards the end of last season, obviously I think he ended up playing a false 9, but there was a point last season where we were playing with Casemiro as a 6 and then just 2 even 8s. I think it was like when Mount first signed and we were thinking about Mount, and I think that would be a really nice midfield. Not necessarily Casemiro, but let's say you play Ugarte, let's say he gets back up on form and everything, and then you have Ugarte playing as a 6, and then Bruno and Mount, or Bruno and Mainu as 2 8s. So not necessarily either one of them sticking right behind the striker, but 2 of them kind of occupying kind of the half channels, not quite wide, but not quite central. I think that would be a much better way to play Bruno Fernandes.
I think we have seen that before, but it was at the very beginning, I think, of last season. But we had that massive island where the way that Ten Hag tries to operate it, and maybe it needs a different manager to pull the 2 8s in a bit more and closer to the 6. But we had that issue where there's a big, the 6 is on an island on his own. Of course, it was Casemiro at the time, you're right. And maybe Ugarte is more mobile for that role. Maybe you just need someone more mobile to do the lone 6 role. But I just think it's got to be 2 8s and a 10 with Bruno not in the 10, or he can be in a 2-8 and a 6 system, but I think he has to be the 6.
But I just reckon right now, if we played Bruno Fernandes as the number 6, we get torn through. We're not organised because he's not a defensive player. If you're talking about when we have the ball and he's able to get the ball, collect the ball in defence and then spray it out forwards and kind of push the team forwards, yes. But we're getting torn through at the moment. And if we play Bruno Fernandes as a number 6 and he's off the ball, he's just going to get completely torn apart.
Well, I do understand that. I mean, the best way to defend the pitch is to have the football. The best form of defending is actually attacking. And when if you have someone that's able to distribute and rotate the ball as quickly, seeing the picture that Bruno does, I think you have more of the football, so you're not suffering attacks. Then if you have people, that protect him in terms of, being more defensively robust in front of him as 2-8s, maybe Agate and Casemiro, for example, or one very robust 8 in front of him, and then somebody that can retain the ball and correctly make the passes, because he's so erratic with it. He's losing the ball, and then our 6 or our 8s are having to be on the defensive straight away because Bruno loses the ball in those key areas ahead of us. So if you can keep Kobe in there, that's going to retain it, and you make 3 or 4 correct passes with your front 4 players, including Kobe, then we're able to build and sustain attacks in the opponent's half. I think he sees the picture quickly, Bruno. And if he's able to distribute it quickly, then we're able to advance to that next stage of the play quickly. But his ability to make the right decisions in the final third, it's just been really rash and horrible this season.
I think what's happening is, and he's done it a few times, is he gets into this tunnel vision state of mind where it becomes, some people call it hero ball, etc. But I think a better way to describe it is a tunnel vision state of mind where it's he gets the ball and he, because we're not doing well, he thinks, right, I have to be as fast as I can in getting it from A to B, get it straight to Rashford, get it straight to blah, 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 without kind of maybe taking a second and maybe assessing the scenario, specific on-pitch scenario when he's got the ball at his feet. Just taking a second to chill and just maintain control. Because then we keep, as you keep saying, we keep then losing the ball. But I think what you're mentioning there is how we could turn Bruno Fernandes into a 6 in an ideal world. But right now, in the mess we're in, I think it'd be better if he was dropped.
Yeah.
So instead of kind of trying to keep him on the field and push him to a 6 and move other players on, you just drop him and play Mount or Eriksen. I know Mount's had hopefully he'll be fit again after the international break, because he had the head clash against Spurs. Yeah. But even Eriksen, I thought Eriksen's been great bar that one lapse of judgment where he conceded the ball again. But that's because he was sat in our own third. Put him further up the field. He's really coming into his own again this season. He's been really clever, and I think that's the kind of person we need at the moment now. Yeah. Because Eriksen will slow things down, tempo, control it, calm it, and then play a sensible decision. Yeah. When we're winning and we're all great and our players are all playing well, Bruno is fantastic because he just accelerates that. When we're not doing well, he exacerbates it the other way completely. So I really reckon just drop Bruno Fernandes and play Christian Eriksen as a 10 with Ugarte and Kobe, or maybe Mount behind him or something.
No, I agree with you, Dylan. I think that's the strongest idea. But in terms of going forward, if we're not playing a counter-attacking system under Conte and Simeone, where there's so much space to attack in front of you and you need a player to get it out to your fast players that are going to run into that space quickly, that's what Bruno's wonderful at. And goal scoring, creating opportunities. In terms of ball retention, he needs to be close to the defenders to help on ball regains and to help snuff out counter-attacks and to be alert to that. He's a captain now. He should want to lead and protect the team as much as possible. But he sees the picture quickly. So in a possession system, maybe have him distribute the ball quickly out into the areas where you're giving the ball to more technically secure players. I just think you're right. He needs to be out the team. He just needs to be out the team. But then who's your captain while he's out the team? I don't know.
That's a really good question. Ooh, who would I put as captain? Because the obvious decision would be someone maybe in terms of how long they've been there and stuff, that's Marcus Rashford. You can't put Marcus Rashford.
Can't put him there, Dylan.
Harry Maguire has just injured himself for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. De Ligt is too early.
Yeah, I was about to say De Ligt is too early.
Martinez has been shocking form.
Or Martinez, again, the form is not necessarily there.
Is Dalot really there? The form's not been brilliant.
You know what? I would give it to either Dalot, Eriksen, or Onana.
Is Eriksen going to be able to play 80 minutes every season?
He played 90 minutes 4 games in a row. Okay, so what I'd say maybe do then is, if Bruno Fernandes is out the team and you're starting Christian Eriksen, I would probably put Christian Eriksen as captain, and if he's not, I would put it as Andre Onana.
Like, who's the next? Who's the leaders in our team? Like, who is the leader? Like, how many leaders do we have? We don't have any leaders. Like,
I think we do. Okay, so I'm just going to keep saying Onana because
Yeah.
I was a fan of him last season, despite the fact that he is a bit of a chaotic season. This season, I've become even more fan. He's been our player of the year so far for me. Onana's been a shining light in this just dark, horrid time. But leaders, I would say, like these people who act leaders on the pitch. You've got Onana. You do have Bruno. Like he is a leader. Ericsson, Dalot. And I'd say players just like standard players like Leacher, the people who just like will always exude that kind of leader style existing
they
on the pitch.
They have a bit of an aura to them.
Leacher and De Ligt will grow into it. I think he will grow into it. I still have a lot of confidence that De Ligt will be a good player. Like we talked about this last week. I've got a lot of confidence that he will end up a good centre back. But I do think we have leaders in that dressing room. And maybe off the pitch, it's like Marcus Rashford might be a leader, but again, it's such a controversial figure at the moment, Marcus Rashford. I can't work out what's going on. So I'm not going to say him for now, but I'm sure he is, especially for younger ones.
Do you think Bruno and Rashford are holding us back in terms of, you know, our style of play or ability to kind of perform, you know, and do well?
I really don't think so. I think it's more they're in a system that doesn't work for them more than anything. Like the system in the first season worked. Rashford scored 30 goals, man, in what Ten Hag was doing in the first season. And he changed it in the second season and it didn't work. So potentially they're holding us back in the system Ten Hag wants us to play. But I reckon it's more of a case of Ten Hag are holding the two of them back from playing their best football than the two of them are holding Ten Hag back to play the right style of play, if that makes sense. Yeah,
well, and that right style of play is in Ten Hag's mind anyway, because there's obviously a different style of play that we've seen previously that Bruno's worked under, that Rashford's worked under and performed under. So I do think maybe it's the system that is really hindering the whole squad, really, you know, two people in the midfield.
It's the entire system. This is what I'm saying. Like, I'm reluctant to put too much blame on players this time. You can do it for some of the other managers, but this time round, I'm reluctant to put too much blame on the players themselves. Because it's again, as I say, because I fully believe they are not bad players. They are brilliant footballers on their day, pretty much all of them. And they've all shown that, not even just elsewhere, but at United they've shown it, like Martinez and Rashford and Onana this season and Bruno Fernandes before. All these players have shown that they are fantastic footballers and they've shown it at the club themselves rather than just showing it elsewhere and then being poor when they got here, which just leads me to conclude that it's not on them.
Yeah.
Well, not all on them.
Yeah.
But we do need to talk about how to fix the club. We kind of touched on this in terms of like what drop Bruno Fernandes, whatever, but we need to talk like how do we save this season? In a more general point, away from sack Ten Hag.
Yeah.
Let's say go down the route first of all. Let's say he stays.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Let's assume he stays.
Yeah.
How do we fix it from there?
It's a really good question because if he stays, I think you have to look at maybe changing the formation or the style of play. I think he's kind of tried to do that against Villa. He's tried to be a bit more conservative or more adaptable at times, depending on the morale and how the squad's been playing. But he has to utilise the squad a lot better and play players that have been playing well. And when players are not playing well, drop them and be a lot more harsh on that. So Ahmad needs to play more football. I think there's been a period this season where Rashford should have been dropped for a few games. These first 7 or 8, I can't remember how many Premier League games. Bruno needs to be dropped. Again, you need to be able to utilise and pick the right midfield. The way that you're utilising Kobe, I don't think that's been right. And then playing Agate a lot more in that midfield selection. And so picking the right midfield combinations. If that means sometimes Casemiro and Agate, and then Bruno's been put Kobe in the 10. Agate, Casemiro, Kobe in the 10. I think that like his combination of like players in the forward line as well. I don't think Bruno and Xerxes work. I think they occupy the same spaces at times, you know, because Xerxes always wants to drop deep into the midfield or into the 10 areas, and Bruno's already in there. Sometimes even playing Bruno as a false 9 is horrible because he just is so erratic and he doesn't hold the shape of the team or that 4-2-4 off the ball high pressing system. Mason Mount was brilliant at it for the first couple of games. The way, you know, it wasn't a high scoring game, even though we had a few good chances against both Fulham and Brighton away. But Mason Mount, the way that he plays the 10 in that system and shape is really good in comparison to Bruno. So, and he's been unfortunate in that sense. I mean, Mason Mount hasn't been around, but he needs to be able to pick the right 11s. That's the only way I can see it changing. Otherwise, you go back to your 4-2-3-1, like you were saying about in the first season and how it was working for certain players, because this system is just not working for these players. It just isn't, and he has to change the formation. And he has to get those combination of 11s, especially in the midfield and the forward line, right? Because I think the back line's kind of picking itself at the moment, or the back five, including the goalkeeper, is picking itself at the moment. It's just that midfield, it never looks right, that midfield too. And then that front four, it just never looks right once Bruno's the 10 there.
Yeah, I agree. The way I'd see it is I think Ten Hag, assuming he stays, needs to go into survival mode. You've got to do what you know has worked. Because we're trying things at the moment that could work. We don't know, and they aren't working.
Yeah.
But go back to what you did before, like first season, and also what you did against Man City. Like to a certain extent, what that was conceding that you're not the superior team in some of the games.
Yeah.
And it worked against City. We conceded that we weren't the superior team in the FA Cup final, and we battered them. In the first season, we did it a fair few times, and sometimes it didn't work. Like we kind of stood off and against teams like Liverpool and they beat 7-0. Like they happen, they're freak show results. But I really think it's a kind of a stick to what you know, survive. Like stick to 4-2-3-1. Stick with the two players who are there to protect the back four. Stick with the back four that works. So I just say for now, as he says, keep playing Johnny Evans. Assuming like he's fit, not every single game, but let's say in the Premier League, play Johnny Evans because he was fantastic against Villa. That's what Ten Hag did against Villa. Was he went into survival mode a bit? Yes, it was a draw, but I'm not in context. I wasn't happy with the draw because we'd just drawn to Porto and we've drawn to Palace, lost to Liverpool, Spurs. So it's bad start. But as an isolated result, 0-0 draw away against Villa, especially just after they beat Bayern, I'm not fussed about it. I'm not. What's the word? Not fussed.
You're not worried. You're not complaining.
It's like fine, decent result, point on the road.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of the notes that United's players seem to be saying in their posts, their posts after the game. I know obviously went, but a lot of them are saying, because that's a well-earned point on the road in isolation. Yeah. He went to survival mode and it worked. I think just keep going into survival mode because I think that will get the best out of players which realistically have had to go into that kind of mode several times over the last few years under many different managers.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way that he tried to implement the survival mode in the 4-4-2 wasn't good though. And we didn't, and I feel like Aston Villa were kind of there for the taking. Their performance was really downtrodden as well, like really poor. But and it's away from Ten Hag's principles. At least in the Porto game, he was trying to play how he wants to play in the 4-2-4. In this game, it was like it didn't even look like Ten Hag football. I didn't even know what was going on, in that Villa game, and it was just so sad that he's reverted to that. I think he can make a better go of the survival style of football, like last season to a degree at times, but it just doesn't look good. His style, he needs to change the style if he stays. He can do counter-attacking football, but it just needs to look different. It's almost like a write-off season if he stays. That's how it feels to me right now, unless he changes drastically what he's doing and how he's trying to do it. Maybe he's good. Maybe he's a counter-attacking manager. Because that first season we was all kind of surprised. He couldn't do build-up, which was the big issue. He couldn't do build-up, but we were kind of scoring a lot of goals and we were finding a way to get something out of Rashford. And Bruno was getting utilised in a correct way, in my opinion. But like you say, he needs those two players, protecting the back four, and also protecting Bruno's erratic kind of behaviour or his style of when he loses the ball. There's two players there to cover and run and find and patch up the spaces that have been left when we're out of formation because we're trying to commit bodies forward and Bruno's lost the ball. And then he's got the two wingers that are happy to go backwards as well as go forwards and fill those gaps as well. So I think, if he stays, it's like we're not going to recognise the Ten Hag or it's going to be the first season. But if he goes, and it could potentially be a write-off season, because we were saying, the target should be top four. The target needs to be Champions League football this season. It has to be. So, and I think right now we're maybe 8 points off of it, fourth. or 6 points off of it.
It's around that.
It's still early days, didn't it? Like
It's doable to get
Yeah.
back there, but
Yeah.
you've got to be almost spotless for the next 4 months.
Yeah. It's. I still would like to think that we could achieve this, but only with a fresh pair of eyes. So, you know, if to really save the season, it has to be a fresh pair of eyes that utilize this squad a lot better than what and have better ideas and systems. And because Ten Hag's given us new terms, you know, turnovers and ball regains, and these things are important things to look at going forward and to take for the manager to take and for us to improve on, you know, the next manager to take and go forward with. But it's like the way that he sets up an 11 and puts them on the pitch and to mark space and to attack space and to protect space is just not right. They're not taking it on and it's not moving us forward. So maybe a new manager, if it's, you know, 2 or 3 at the back or 5 at the back, maybe they're able to have a defensive solid base, but also allow us to attack or retain the ball in the opposition's half or get stronger spells of possession, because we haven't seen those things yet under Ten Hag. So it's worrying.
Let's say there is Ten Hag sacked, and then because if Ten Hag sacked, I'm convinced that it probably will be Ruben Nistelrooy, right, that will come in. But do INEOS then bring in Ruben Nistelrooy and then give him the season, or do they bring in Ruben Nistelrooy and then still try and find someone else ASAP? So like when we sacked Solskjaer, it was Carrick for 3 games, then we brought Rangnick in. They didn't give Carrick until the rest of the season. Do they do that again, or do they just do what they did with Ole, which was not necessarily give him a new contract, but they just let Ole get to the end of the season and then sign someone then?
Yeah. Well, they signed. Well, even Ole's situation, he started off as interim. So
yeah, but that's what I mean. So when they sacked Solskjaer, they gave Ole interim and then gave him until the end of the season. But when they sacked Solskjaer, they gave it to Carrick for a few games and then they brought in someone else. Like, do you think it'd be better to, let's say on the assumption that he's sacked and Ruben Nistelrooy comes in, Ruben Nistelrooy gets the whole of the rest of the season to do something, I don't know, or bring in Ruben Nistelrooy and still try and find someone more permanent as soon as you can?
So what I would say is, Ruud, I think it's too early for Ruud to take on this, and he's seen the ship sink. He's been part. I feel like I feel like he's still on his apprenticeship. He still needs to learn. He's seen this sinking ship, and he hasn't been able to add himself to the coaching system to see a good positive 8 or 10 in all comps games. He should have been here, added to this to add goals, to add. We should have seen his paintbrush on this canvas a little bit. It should have seen it, and so I wouldn't. If it's interim, I'm very worried that it's interim for the rest of the season, and then you're signing them on as a manager, like we did with Ole originally. Obviously, when Ole got sacked, I think there was a period where Rangnick comes in and Carrick comes in. Like there was just a blurry lines and no decisiveness. I think it's got to be a big manager that knows this league, or a big manager with big caliber, worked with a big club before. I'm saying Julian Nagelsmann's worked at big clubs. Currently, he's managing, you know, under big pressure at Germany. Has been in Germany's domestic league with Bayern Munich. That's big clubs, big pressure. You need to know the pressure now.
Bayern wanted him back as well.
He's a very good manager. Or if we're looking at Thomas Tuchel, knows the pressure of this league, managed at Chelsea, done well. You know, talking about the value of points against big teams. You know, I don't think he got beat by, you know, big teams at Chelsea, you know, against Arsenal, against City, and that he always was competitive games. So Tuchel's someone there that can bring a degree of stability to save us this season, because that's what it looks like. Yeah. There's no stability, there's no consistency. And that maybe is the first standpoint. I feel like that might bring us backwards in terms of we're going back to counter-attacking. But I guess you got to take your mind from whether it's a counter-attacking or attacking team. I think at Manchester United, we just want winning football. You know, winning football and a style, an effective football, whether it's from a counter-attacking standpoint or attacking standpoint. Even though at the same time, Ole got to a degree where it was a bit boring and we were struggling. But that was when, you know, the board had and Woodward had kind of added players to try and take the next step and move us further forward. Ole couldn't do it. So a world-class, top-caliber manager is what we need, you know. And I just think, you know, Ruud right now is too early for him.
I agree. I think out of all the people who could even semi be available, Tuchel's the only one I've seen who's come in and been able to make a change like this. Because he came into Chelsea midway through a season, and then about 5 months later they won the Champions League. Like, that's mental. The fact that he comes in mid-season, they win the Champions League. I know that's like, because I think he's the one person who's around available now who's shown that he can just make a change and make a good change really quickly. What I'm surprised about is that no one's mentioned at any point that it could not be Van Nistelrooy who takes over, and instead it's Ren Heck who takes over, because he's managed. He was a manager before. That's just something I find kind of amusing, is that everyone's immediately gone Ruud. Like the other
Ruud,
guy,
yeah.
He's more of a manager than Ruud was,
Yeah.
because he was a manager for a Dutch. Like, I know Ruud was at PSV for a bit, but I think wasn't that in an interim capacity as well?
Like 1 or 2, yeah. It was like 1 or 2.
Whereas Ren Heck was the manager of, admittedly, Go Ahead Eagles. That's not like the biggest caliber of team, but he was still a manager. But that's the point I just find quite funny, that everyone always says Ruud, no one mentions him. But the last thing, that what I said before to finish, is that I think the ultimate way to save our season is A, sack Ten Hag, give it interim Ruud for a couple of games, only if negotiations with Tuchel extend a bit. Don't like give in to whatever monetary demands, whatever immediately just need. Like, if you give it to Ruud for a few games or Renhek for a few games, fine. But as fast as you reasonably can, get someone permanent in. And for me, that is Tuchel, because I think Tuchel was my top choice in the summer as well, out of managers who were realistically available, and he was Sir Jim Ratcliffe's top choice as well. So me and Ratcliffe both, we know ball. Also, it's because it's Tuchel. There's no one else exciting. But that's just so save United, sack Ten Hag, and bring in a new permanent manager, someone like Tuchel, ASAP. Don't wait till the end of the season. Do it now.
Agreed.
Only way to save the season.
Agreed.
Yeah. So if any of us want to listen to Marcel and Dylan on What the Devil podcast, they can listen on Spotify, watch on YouTube, listen on Apple Podcasts and everything. Apart from that, our time is up. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week.